Hello viewers, new and loyal. This video will be detailing my life journey 21 years in to celebrate reaching 2,000 subscribers, which means it's going to be a long video. My advice is to sit back, relax, grab a nice drink and maybe some popcorn and chill while I share my little world with you. If you're for efficiency, I've structured this video somewhat non-chronologically and thematically, so head down to the description to jump to specific sections as shown here. Oh, and special thanks to my beautiful assistant who will be helping me tell this story. With this preamble out of the way, let's get on with the show. Like most living things, my beginning was the result of a chance union between two others. Let's call one dad and the other one mum. On the left we have the dad. Now, this guy was a country fellow. Playing outside was his thing, as was tinkering with his motorbike he'd saved up for and then racing it against his brother in the woods like some sort of daredevil with an inflated death wish. In fact, let's call him Daredevil Dad. On the right we have Mum. This story isn't as straightforward as it's set in the exotic and troubled country of Tanzania. And I know what you're thinking. Drawings look pretty cool on this split up. And you'd be right. And you'd also be right to think, Jamie doesn't look Tanzanian. Well, I'm not. I'm actually part Indian. My great-granddad took an epic voyage from Gujarat to Tanzania in search of a better life. It worked, and my mum was raised with lions and tigers and elephants under the watchful eye of Mount Kilimanjaro. Alas, my mum's time here was cut short as the government following Idi Amin's lead in Uganda nationalised the economy and housing and began to expel loads of non-natives, which happened to my mum when she was 16. I've added a link down in the description if you're curious to know more about the history of this region. Being a selfish existence-clinging human, I am glad for this turn of events as it allowed for my mum to meet the Daredevil when she came to England. Long story short, the Daredevil sold my mum a car, they met, they married, and they had a kid. As you've noticed, this kid is too pretty to be me. That is my sister. If we fast forward 16 months, I come into the picture. My sister wasn't too keen on my arrival as she ran down the hospital corridor to avoid me, which I've artistically represented by rubbing her out of this photo. Don't worry, she eventually liked me. In fact, she's one of my best friends, which is pretty cool considering siblings are not usually meant to get on. Oh, and here's a customary baby photo. Aww. As the clock ticked by, I got older, naturally. What was I like as a kid? Well, I loved watching cartoons, Dragon Ball Z, Beyblades, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! I also loved playing with Lego and drawing. In fact, I managed to find one of the pictures that I did when I was about 8. And here are some things that I drew in January of this year. And I think I've made a little bit of progress. And I loved cardboard. I'd literally make everything and anything I could out of cardboard. Like, I even made a pair of shoes once, so I could slide around on the carpet. In fact, my first spaceship was made out of cardboard. Plus, it had its own Malteser dispenser. Eat your heart out, Neil Armstrong. What was I like personality-wise? Well, I loved asking why. My dad said it was to the point of being irritating, but the Daredevil and Mum were pretty cool and answered the majority of weird and wonderful questions that I had. I suppose that was because I was their kid. Another cool thing that my parents did was save up throughout the year so we could go on holiday, which is why I've been all over the place, shown by the coloured areas in this picture of the globe that I've drawn. My personal favourites on this map are Disney World, Dubai, Canada, and Mallorca. Disney because it was frickin' Disney and I was 7 and I got to hug Mickey Mouse. Dubai because it was a big family holiday with my cousins, Canada for similar reasons, and I have family there, and Mallorca because that was where my first holiday was. I don't really remember it because I was 18 months old, but I have a picture somewhere of me catching my first fish, but I couldn't find it for this video. Oh, thank you. Right, here we go. FYI, I only caught the fish because it was dead. That's how the pros do it. Now let's talk about primary school. I had a wonderful primary school that was located at the bottom of the hill near my house. My memories from this time in my life mainly involve playing and running and jumping and trading Pokemon cards and spinning Beyblades and laying on the grass. My friend group in primary school was also fantastic, but things got split up when we went to secondary school as people went to different locations. The next location I went to was the high school that was up the hill near my house. The high school had a pretty infamous reputation, and I recall my mum saying that we would never go there when I was younger. However, I didn't pass my 11 plus to get into the local grammar school, so to the comprehensive school I went. The first thing I learned was how innocent my primary school was, and how nice people were there, because people weren't so nice in high school. So this is the part in the story where I tell you how things got sad and how mean people were. Well, sort of. Context would be helpful. So in year 9, i.e. when I was about 11, I was this skinny, average height, not that sporty, semi-shy kid who was unaware of school world beyond playing, and there were lots of kids who liked to pick on people like me. Also, I didn't have an explicit friend group as such, because my old friends began hanging out with different people, so I got to work on my "will you be my friend" skills. Post year 9 is when I grew quite a lot, both physically and in personality. This was partly because I was forced into doing drama, as my school specialised in performing arts, so that's the subject I did for GCSE, as I was told I was decent at it. I was really glad the teacher suggested this, because turns out I love drama. A theme throughout the various roles I played was that they consistently pushed me outside of my comfort zone. I was a murderous father who killed his daughter because she shamed the family, I was a schizophrenic brother who accidentally killed his mother, and I was a camp fairy who narrated the performance using rhyming couplets and iambic pentameter to complement my prancing about the stage. So then GCSEs eventually happened and my efforts paid off as I got 11 A stars and I set a new record for my school. A-levels then became my academic focus. We had English, history, maths, and chemistry. I picked these not really knowing what I wanted to do for a degree, but what they did reflect was my torn heart. You have my love for the arts on one side, and the fact that I was hardwired to think like a scientist on the other. What helped me decide what degree I wanted to do was the unique summer school that Oxford offered, which one of my teachers mentioned. Essentially, you do a week in the life of an Oxford student in the summer between year 12 and 13. I did history, and now I discovered that I loved Oxford, but I wasn't too keen on studying history. Eventually, I discovered PPE, which I'd never done before, so I did some reading over the summer to get a feel for each of the topics, loved it, applied, got in. Of course, it wasn't that simple, but I have loads of videos detailing that journey already, so for the sake of not sounding like a broken record, let's talk about what I used to do in my free time. However, just before jumping to that, I haven't mentioned in other videos the locations I applied to that weren't Oxford. So they were Warwick, UCL, York, and the LSE. The grade requirements for these places was the same as for Oxford, and if I hadn't got into Oxford, I probably would have not gone to uni. At that point in time, I thought going straight into an apprenticeship was the next most sensible option because I could earn money and train and learn how to set up my own business. Reflecting back now, I'm less convinced that this would have been the best move because the extent to which I grew as a person at university was pretty staggering, though I'm not sure if that is an Oxford thing or a general university thing, as I have no other university experiences to draw on because, well, I haven't been to any other universities. The design to set up my own business links nicely with the most interesting thing I did when I was still a kid, which was to set up my own online business at 12. Before diving into this, I have a confession. My name is Jamie, and I used to play RuneScape, an online massively multiplayer RPG game. For anyone who cares, I was a level 82 and my weapon of choice was an Abyssal Whip, paired with a poisoned dragon dagger. Amongst its many features, the most fantastic thing about this game was the fact that it had its own economy. People could buy and sell goods using the digital currency, and prices would fluctuate according to the supply and demand of these goods. Within this economy, I became very good at arbitrage, buying things when they were cheap and selling them when they were more expensive to turn a profit. This is where the business side of things comes in. I loved being independent, and most of my friends got pocket money, giving them some financial independence, and I wanted that, so I decided I would write a guide on how to make money in this game and then sell it. I asked my dad for some investment, I think it was about £50 at the time to cover some fees, and I started selling the guides. Chatting to my dad about this now sheds an amusing light on the situation. At the time, I didn't think this was an odd request in any sense, but my dad said that he had to smile and hold his skepticism. I suppose it is kind of absurd for a 12-year-old to ask you for your bank details so he can put them on the internet to sell an ebook for a video game that he plays. Anyway, it worked, and I ran that for a few years until the economy of the game became nationalised. By that time, I didn't want to play anymore, so I just let it go. Also, I use this as an example of why nationalising most things is a bad idea. There are two themes from the story worth noting. One is my love for video games. With the money, I allowed myself one extravagance, and that was to get a PlayStation 3 on launch day on the 23rd of March 2007, a day that I will have etched into my memory until I die. I played Resistance, Metal Gear Solid, Warhawk, Little Big Planet, Uncharted. Yeah, I liked gaming. On top of that, I gamed quite a lot, like not a ridiculous amount, but most of my free time went on gaming, not really studying. Immersing myself in a world made of pixels with a fantastic story and an epic soundtrack that leaves goosebumps on your skin was a compelling proposition, and mix that with the ability to level up and I am sold. My childhood gave me a fairly good grounding, as well as one of my aunts introduced me to the Game Boy, and I discovered Pokemon. You know those people who can walk while looking at their phones and maintain complete awareness of their surroundings? Yeah, that's me. I honed that skill by becoming a Pokemon master while following my family around while they would go shopping. The other big theme from the online business story is the self-starting attitude. I wanted an income, so I thought of a way of getting one. My age didn't concern me, or my lack of knowledge about running an e-commerce business. I just figured it out as I went. This sort of attitude led me to do decorating and gardening and tutoring and CV consulting. To let you know how my mind works, I don't really see problems. I just see the world consisting of obstacles that I eventually figure a way around. Sometimes that's smashing through them, or pivoting, or going around them through some ingenious tunneling, but you figure it out and you don't let it stop you from acting. In the context of school, however, I didn't like the idea of joining clubs with regard to extracurricular things. In my head, I thought they were lame. Why would I want to spend more time at school playing a trombone when I could be at home? Other things I thought were lame were watching the news and reading fiction. I was a non-fiction guy, and the idea of reading stories was not interesting at all, because it wasn't fact. Obviously, I no longer hold this view, as I'm currently eating my way through a lot of books. Anyway, my perspective on doing extracurricular things at school completely changed when I got to sixth form, when I was about 17 or 18, as I began to catch up on all the extracurricular things I'd been neglecting. I was part of the events organisation team, and then I became head student, which I absolutely loved. My main role was to fundraise for the school's charities and proms, and naturally I wanted to raise the most money of any team before me and put on the most memorable and fantastic prom the school had ever seen. If any of you are thinking of doing 5 A-levels, I would suggest you get really stuck into a role like this instead of doing a 5th. I learned a ridiculous amount about people and event organisation that made organising lots of future events child's play. So the value add is far greater in my opinion than what I would have gained from getting an additional grade. Oxford University is an exception. This part of my life was the most intense and the most enjoyable part so far. The friends I've made, the places I got to travel to, and the knowledge and the expertise I was able to absorb. But with most things, you get out what you put in, and I did Oxford kind of intensely. So the first year of university was a huge learning curve for me. Imagine being taught how to swim by your teacher, and what your teacher does is they grab you and they throw you into the deep end and say swim. The amount of work you're expected to do increases exponentially relative to what you do at A-level. In fact, I remember having work due on the Sunday of my first week, so Freshers Week was a balance of doing philosophical logic, settling in, and trying to make friends. The other amazing thing about first year was the fact that I was now at university and I had all the freedom a young adult gets when they move away from home. With this freedom, I wanted to do everything. In my first week, I went to tons of freshers events, from water polo to fencing to rifle shooting and even meditation. Making friends was the other big thing I spent my first year doing. The majority of friends that I have now, I have for life, and I met them in the kitchen. As in my first term, I wanted to cook all of my own meals just to prove I could, so I got chatting to lots of people. I would say my biggest mistake in first year was focusing so much on my own personal development that I didn't do as much relaxing as I should have, like playing games with my friends. For instance, I experimented with different sleep patterns to maximize my productivity, and I worked on some side projects and while trying to juggle my degree work, so yeah, productivity was my main focus. One of the highlights from first year was setting up this YouTube channel, so let's check out that story for a second. I've always wanted to do something on YouTube, as I love the idea of sharing my advice and entertaining people, having watched people like Charlie So Cool Like and the Vlogbrothers. I just never got around to doing it though, because I didn't feel as though I had any true value to add, and I didn't want to be another piece of white noise on the internet. However, upon getting into Oxford, I thought I would make videos about that. So I applied for funding for a camera from my student body and won. True to my word, I started making videos, and come the summer of 2012, I celebrated 100 subscribers. Obviously, things continued to pick up, and now there are 30 times as many of you acting as members of this community through your commenting, sharing, and content requests. It means a lot to have such a wonderful set of people to share this experience with, so thank you. Moving away from sentimentality, other highlights were visiting CERN, the Physics Research Centre in Geneva, as the LHC was something I've always wanted to visit, going to the Magdalen Ball with all my friends, think one of the Great Gatsby's parties, but with all the people you love, a circus and bumper cars. And, of course, going to Tokyo to work for a geisha. Most of you know I love Japanese culture, so going to Tokyo for the summer was a big deal for me, as I got to see if the country lived up to my expectations, and boy did it. Going to Japan is like stepping into another dimension, with so many contradictions existing in harmony, like the mix between technology and nature. For example, you have a Shinto shrine randomly appearing when walking around a busy city in Tokyo. It's madness. The fact that I got to work for a geisha made my experience in Japan even more amazing, as I got to glimpse into an ancient part of Japanese history. Geisha means the highest caliber of artists, so people hire them to entertain their guests in a tea house through conversation and performances like fan dancing. To clarify, I was helping her with her digital marketing strategy by bringing her business efforts into the 21st century. I could talk about my adventures in Japan until my voice gives out, so let's move on to second year. In second year, I made a really big mistake, and that was picking a room that was relatively far away from my closest friends because it was just a nicer room. That is when I learned that material possessions are meaningless unless you have people to share them with. Another thing I got better at was the art of juggling a ton of extracurricular things with my degree, something I wasn't so great at in first year. So the degree is meant to take up 40 hours per week, and on top of that, I was the vice president of my college's student body, I was project managing a team in Oxford Digital Marketing Competition, and I did the Google Online Marketing Competition while applying for some internships. With the latter, it paid off and I ended up interning at Google London that summer, which I will talk about in a sec. Lots of you ask me how I go about juggling lots of things all at once, and the simple answer is if you really want to do something, make time to do it. If all I had to do in my life was my degree, I would have spent all of my time doing it. However, I decided I didn't only want to do my degree because then I'd be wasting my university experience, so I made time to do lots of other things, and I always made time to go to special events with my friends. When someone says to me that they're too busy to do X, I'm not very sympathetic, because if they really wanted to make time, I'm pretty sure they could, but maybe my bar is just unrealistically high. I don't know. So yes, set yourself deadlines, continually reevaluate what you need to prioritize, and then do it. Remember to make time for the people you care about, otherwise you regret it when they're no longer around, and make sure that you have fun. Life is far too short to do things that you don't enjoy. So, Google. If any of you have seen the film The Internship, which is all about interning at Google, it's very much like that, but without the politics, and there's no Vince Vaughn, and there's no Owen Wilson. It is a fantastic company that really supports your personal development and provides you with a really amazing work-life balance and rewards those who work hard. They give you a serious amount of responsibility straight away, and the people you work with are all intellectually stimulating, and most importantly, they are extremely nice people. My biggest lesson to share with you all is if you go into the working world, or rather when you go into the working world, make sure you get to know everyone on your team. If people like you and you like them, it's far easier to get work done because you'll naturally want to help each other out. Initially, I focused on getting all my projects done and neglected this part of the process, which definitely limited my success in some areas. It may seem like a waste of time initially, but it will seriously pay off and you will look forward to seeing everyone at work each morning. Now we come to my final year, which is split up into two sections. The first is my first term, when I spent most of my time wrapping up my extracurricular activities, and the second section was when I began to focus on finals. Wanting to push myself even further, I decided to take up even more responsibility. So on top of writing 2 essays per week, I was the vice president, the secretary, and the returning officer for my college's student body. I did martial arts 3 times a week, and I made weekly vlogs. I went to ice hockey every Wednesday, and I did some freelance video making. I was doing 80 hours a week in the end, and I spent my free time seeing friends and sleeping. It took me 2 years of practice, but I finally managed to crack doing all this stuff and getting a decent amount of sleep at the same time. Before I could operate on like 6 hours of sleep, but I wanted to push that closer to 8 because sleep is ridiculously important, and I just feel a lot better if I get more of it. People who gloat about getting really little sleep, I just don't understand. It's simply not something you should really be boasting about. Anyway, After the first term ended, I retired from all my college duties and I had a ridiculous amount of free time that it was quite overwhelming at first. I felt liberated and spent most of my free time catching up with people over cups of tea and putting my energy into my degree. Here is another piece of advice. Try and segment your life up for your own personal sanity. It can be hard to live and study and socialise all in the same place as it becomes harder to mentally separate things. When I began to focus on my degree, I made the library my study space, my room my relaxation space, and outside of college is where I tried to hang out with people. Also, I highly recommend socialising with people outside of your immediate social group just to give you another world to step into if you need to take a breath of fresh air. I've got a day in the life of a finalist video in the pipeline, so I won't detail my finalist days too much, but I will reiterate something I said in an earlier video about preparing for any big examination. The ideal scenario is that you work hard and you put in all of the effort that you would do if there was an exam. So you put in the hours, you get as much value from the process as possible, and then you discover that you don't have any exams to do. This is the ideal situation because it is the skills that you develop while preparing for something like an exam that are really important, not the exams themselves. As the vast amount of academic value I got from my degree was predominantly from the final few months than the years leading up to the time that I was preparing for my finals, because that is when everything began to piece itself together and it all just made so much more sense. Hey look, Naruto. That pretty much takes us up to the present, so I thought it'd be nice to talk about the future. My medium-term goal is to found my own company, one that, really adds value to the world rather than being a nice-to-have thing like Snapchat. So currently I'm waiting and building up my skills to be an awesome founder, as I currently don't know what that company will be. Anyone has any ideas that they think would be cool? But in the long term, I want to be an educator in some capacity. I don't know whether that would be in a classroom or through a medium that allows for a wider audience, so I'll have to see what's in store on that front. I also want to make sure I see the world before I get too caught up in my working life. I love traveling, as traveling allows me to live a different person's life for a small amount of time and experience the world through their eyes. And I love doing that because I love adventure, for one, and secondly, because it builds up a powerful sense of empathy and understanding of other people, which I think is incredibly important to help us all exist with each other on this planet that we call Earth. Oh, I also need to write a novel at some point. For my current plan, I think it will be a trilogy, so we'll have to see how that goes. Regarding the future of this channel, well, I'm going to continue making content on things you want to hear about, so never stop commenting because I do read everything you guys write. My only wish for this channel, if I could have one, is that I could do this full time, because there are so many videos I'd love to make. So who knows, if this channel gets popular enough, that may become a thing. On the evolution of this channel, I have an exciting project up my sleeve I am working hard to launch as soon as possible. The project is for you, and it will aim to get you all working together to achieve your goals. So be sure to stay tuned, as it's going to be a game changer for this community. At least, I'm hoping that it will be. So there you have it. There is a crash course to the story of my life as I draw my life. Thank you for watching, and I hope I didn't go on for so long that your popcorn ran out. As always, be sure to use the comments, private message, and Twitter to reach out. I am always happy to hear from you guys. And to the subscribers who made this video a possibility, I will see you on Sunday.